The May evening couldn't have been more perfect. Soft golden light spilled through the stained glass windows of St. Ambrose Cathedral, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across James Caldwell's crisp black tuxedo. At 32, the astronomy professor had never imagined finding someone who understood his obsession with the stars, until Elena Vasquez had walked into his life 3 years ago. "Ready to make history, Professor," whispered his best man, Detective Thomas Wright, adjusting James's body with a grin. "Just ready to start my future," James replied, his eyes fixed on the cathedral doors where Elena would soon appear. The string quartet began the bridal march, and the assembled guests rose. James's heart pounded in his chest as the doors opened to reveal Elena in her flowing gown, radiant and smiling through her veil. Each step she took toward him felt like gravity itself, inevitable, natural, perfect. Elena reached the altar, her dark eyes meeting his with such certainty that James felt any lingering nervousness evaporate. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice resonating through the cathedral. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The words washed over James as he held Elena's hands, feeling the warmth of her fingers intertwined with his. This was right. This was where he belonged. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional pause, brief, ceremonial, expected to pass in silence. Then the cathedral shook. A deafening roar drowned out the gasps of the wedding guests. The stained glass windows vibrated with such intensity that several cracked, sending colored shards tinkling to the floor. James instinctively pulled Elena close, shielding her as the building continued to tremble. "Earthquake," Thomas shouted above the noise. But James knew better. The vibration pattern, the specific frequency of the sound, this was no natural phenomenon. His years studying astronomical anomalies had taught him to recognize the impossible when he saw it. "Everyone stay calm," the officiant called out, but his words were lost as the cathedral doors burst open. A woman stood silhouetted against the blinding light outside. Not a wedding guest, not anyone James recognized. She walked down the aisle with purpose, her movements fluid yet somehow wrong. Too perfect, too measured. Her skin had a subtle opalescent quality that caught the light, and her eyes were the deep violet of distant nebulae. The cathedral fell silent as she approached. She wore what appeared to be a bodysuit of shifting material that resembled liquid metal, conforming perfectly to her humanoid form. Despite her alien appearance, she was stunningly beautiful, with features that seemed almost sculptured. "Kieran of the House of Caldwell," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made the air itself seem to vibrate. She spoke an ancient dialect first, then switched to perfect English. "I am Thalira, celestial navigator of the Vela constellation. I have crossed 17 galaxies to find you." James stared in shock, aware of Elena's grip tightening painfully on his arm. "My name is James," he said weakly. Thalira tilted her head, studying him with those impossible violet eyes. "That is your Earth designation, but the stellar resonance in your blood cannot be denied. You are my fated bondmate, promised through the ancient convergence of our ancestral lines." From outside came the sounds of sirens and shouting. Through the open doors, James could see smoke rising from what appeared to be a crashed vessel in the park across from the cathedral. "This is insane," Elena whispered, her wedding dress now smudged with dust from the tremors. "James, who is this woman?" But James couldn't answer. Something about Thalira's words echoed in his mind like a half-remembered dream. The stars he'd spent his life studying, had they been calling him home all along? "You feel the recognition," Thalira said, taking another step toward him. "The alignment of our meeting was written in the cosmic currents before either of us drew breath. I have come to take you home." Thomas moved forward protectively. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of stunt this is, but you're interrupting a wedding." Thalira barely glanced at him. "Your union ceremony is inconsequential in the face of interstellar destiny. Two worlds hang in the balance of our joining. As she reached out her hand toward James, a strange sensation washed over him, a feeling of recognition so profound it made him dizzy. Images flashed through his mind, stars viewed not from Earth but from among them, civilizations spanning galaxies, and throughout it all, this woman's face, looking at him across eons. James. Elena's voice broke through his trance. What's happening? Before he could answer, government vehicles screeched to a halt outside the cathedral. Men in tactical gear poured in, surrounding Falira with weapons drawn. In that moment of chaos, James Caldwell stood frozen between worlds, the human life he had planned, and the cosmic mystery unfolding before him. As the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for his choice. The government facility hummed with activity as James sat in a sterile interrogation room, his wedding tuxedo rumpled and stained. Through the one-way glass, he could see Falira in an adjacent room, calmly seated despite being surrounded by scientific equipment and armed guards. She hadn't resisted when the authorities arrived, simply stating that temporal alignment was proceeding as foreseen. "Professor Caldwell, you need to focus," said Agent Diana Mercer, tapping her pen against her notepad. "You're claiming you've never seen this woman before today." "For the 10th time, no," James replied, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "I'm an astronomy professor, not some interstellar Romeo." "Then why did she crash land at your wedding and call you her bondmate?" Agent Mercer's skepticism was palpable. "Our linguists confirmed she's speaking a dialect with similarities to ancient Sumerian, with impossible variations, and the technology in her craft is beyond anything we've seen." James stared at his hands. They looked normal, human, yet Falira's words echoed in his mind. "The stellar resonance in your blood cannot be denied." "Where's Elena?" he asked, changing the subject. "Ms. Vasquez is giving her statement in another room," Mercer replied. "She's understandably upset." An understatement, James thought. The look on Elena's face when Falira had approached, confusion giving way to hurt, and then anger, would haunt him forever. The door opened, and Thomas entered, flashing his detective badge at the federal agent. "I need a minute with my friend." When they were alone, Thomas leaned in. "Listen, man, this is insane. They're saying her ship has elements that match materials found at ancient archaeological sites around the world. Like her people have been here before." "I need to speak with her," James said suddenly, the decision forming before he'd even consciously made it. "James, think about Elena." "I am thinking about Elena," he insisted. "But if I don't understand what's happening, how can I explain it to her?" An hour later, James sat across from Falira in a monitored room. Up close, the alienness of her was both subtle and profound. Her breathing pattern slightly off rhythm, her blinking too measured. "You do not remember," she said, her voice carrying that strange musical quality. "The genetic memory was supposed to activate upon our meeting." "I'm human," James said firmly. "Born and raised in Chicago. My parents were high school teachers." Falira's violet eyes softened. "Your adoptive lineage. Honorable caretakers. But the house of Caldwell stretches back to the celestial accord, when my people and yours first crossed paths. We are the astray, travelers of the void. We visited Earth millennia ago, when your civilizations were young, and supposedly left some of your people behind." James asked skeptically. "Not left behind. Chosen guardians. Your ancestor was Kalish, bonded to my ancestress Falira Vex. Our lineages were meant to reunite when Earth reached a certain technological threshold." She reached across the table, not quite touching him. "I studied you from afar. Your fascination with the stars is no coincidence, Kieran." Before James could respond, the door burst open. Elena stood there, her wedding dress exchanged for borrowed clothes, her eyes red-rimmed. "They finally let me see you," she said, ignoring Falira completely. "James, we need to talk. Alone." In a private room, Elena paced while James sat, exhausted beyond words. They're saying she's actually an alien, Elena said, her voice cracking. That her DNA isn't human. Tell me this isn't happening. I don't understand it either, James began, but she cut him off. No, you need to listen. When she spoke, when she looked at you, something changed in your eyes, James, like you recognized her. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. Did you? The honest answer terrified him. I don't know. Something felt familiar. Elena turned away, shoulders tight. My parents emigrated here with nothing, worked themselves to the bone for me to have a normal, happy life. And now, on my wedding day, I find out the man I love might be part alien. She laughed bitterly. It's like a bad sci-fi movie. This doesn't change how I feel about you, James insisted, reaching for her hand. Elena pulled away. Doesn't it? Because that woman in there looks at you like she's been searching for you her entire life. And the worst part, for a moment at the altar, you looked at her the same way. As dawn broke over the facility, James sat alone in his temporary quarters, torn between the life he planned and the cosmic mystery unfolding around him. Outside his window, he could see armed guards surrounding Thalira's crashed ship, its strange organic metallic surface reflecting the morning light like a fallen star. In his pocket, he found the wedding ring he never got to place on Elena's finger. Yet when he closed his eyes, it was Thalira's violet gaze that filled his vision, calling him to a destiny written in the stars. Your grandmother is here, Agent Mercer announced, her perpetual frown deepening. Normally, we wouldn't allow civilians into a secure facility, but she was persuasive. James looked up from the star charts he'd been examining, correlations between Thalira's navigational data and his own research. My grandmother, Elisa's almost 90. How did she even know I was here? The door opened to reveal Elisa Caldwell, regal despite her age, leaning on an ornate walking stick that security had apparently failed to confiscate. Her sharp gray eyes took in the room before settling on James. So, she said without preamble, she finally came for you. James froze. Grandma. Elisa sighed, lowering herself into a chair. I had hoped this day would come after I was gone. Selfish of me, perhaps. She pulled something from her purse, a small crystalline object that caught the light oddly. This belonged to your grandfather, and his father before him. The crystal seemed to pulse with an internal light when James touched it, warming against his skin in a way that felt unnervingly alive. What is this? He whispered. A memory stone. A record of your lineage. Eliza's voice grew softer. Your grandfather explained it all before he died. The Caldwells have always been caretakers of a secret that we carry the blood of the stars. Hours later, James stood before Thalira in her containment room, the crystal glowing brightly between them. The heart seed awakens, she said, eyes wide with reverence. It recognizes its keeper. My grandmother says we're descendants of your people and humans, James said carefully. That this bond you're talking about is real. Thalira's face softened. The seed confirms it. Your genetic memory should be accessible now. As if triggered by her words, the crystal flared. Images flooded James's mind. Star maps, ancient civilizations, faces of ancestors caught between two worlds. And feelings, profound connections spanning generations. The vastness of space contrasted with the intimacy of souls finding each other across impossible distances. I need to get you out of here, he said suddenly, surprising himself. They're planning more invasive tests. I overheard them. That night, with Thomas's reluctant help and his grandmother's cryptic directions, James orchestrated Thalira's escape. They fled in Thomas's car, the crystal guiding them to a remote cabin in the mountains that had been in the Caldwell family for generations. Your dwelling is aligned with the celestial coordinates, Thalira observed as they entered the dusty cabin. Your ancestors understood star positioning. James lit a fire in the old stone hearth, watching as Thalira explored the space, her movements graceful and curious. In the flickering light, with her guard down, she seemed both more alien and more human. You risked much to help me, she said, approaching him. The genetic memory. You can access it now. Fragments, James admitted. It's like remembering someone else's life. Past lives of ancestors I never knew existed. Thalira's hand reached for his, her touch sending an electric current through his skin. Our bond was written in the cosmic currents. Two lineages, separated by galaxies, always meant to find each other again. Her face was inches from his now, those violet eyes reflecting the firelight. The physical joining accelerates the bonding process, she whispered. It awakens dormant genetic memories. James thought of Elena, of promises nearly made. Yet here, with Thalira's hand in his, those memories seemed to belong to another life. The pull between them was gravitational, inevitable as the orbit of planets. I barely know you, he said, even as he leaned closer. Your soul knows mine, Thalira replied, her lips finding his. The kiss deepened, and with it came more fragments of memory. Star systems viewed from ships that sailed the void, ancient ceremonies under twin moons, the joining of bloodlines to preserve something precious. Their bodies moved together before the fire, exploring, discovering, confirming a connection that transcended the physical. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined on the cabin floor, James traced the subtle, luminescent patterns on Thalira's skin that only appeared in moments of intimacy. What happens now? He asked quietly. Thalira's expression grew serious. Now we prepare. My arrival was only the beginning. Others will come, some to celebrate our reunion, others to prevent it. Prevent it? Why? Because our bonding doesn't just unite two people, Kieran. Her violet eyes held both love and worry. It determines the fate of two worlds. 3 days in the mountain cabin felt like stepping outside of time. James absorbed memories from the crystal, while Thalira taught him the forgotten language of his ancestors. Their connection deepened with each passing hour, physical intimacy blending with a telepathic bond that grew stronger until James could sense Thalira's emotions without words. But reality intruded with the sound of approaching helicopters. They found us, James said, hastily gathering their few possessions. Thalira stood perfectly still, head tilted as if listening to distant music. Not government forces, she said, her voice tight. Worse. The severance faction has arrived. The what? Those among my people who believe the bond between our worlds must be broken permanently. Her violet eyes met his. They will kill you to prevent our union. They fled into the forest just as a craft unlike Thalira's sleek vessel descended into the clearing, where Thalira's ship had been organic and flowing in design. This one bristled with angular protrusions that seemed designed for combat. They spent the night in a cave, huddled together as rain pounded outside. James felt Thalira trembling against him, not from cold, but from fear. What aren't you telling me? He asked, brushing a strand of her starlight-colored hair from her face. The genetic memory transfer is still incomplete, she said reluctantly. There is more you must know about our bonding. Tell me now. Thalira sat up, her skin emitting a soft glow in the darkness. Your world stands at a crossroads. Soon, humanity will develop faster than light travel. This will bring you into contact with the greater galactic community. That sounds like a good thing, James said. It depends on how it happens. Thalira's voice grew heavy. Without guidance, your species' entry will trigger defensive protocols from established civilizations. Earth could face extinction. James felt cold despite their shared warmth. And our bonding prevents this. The houses of Caldwell and Velot were established as bridges between worlds. Our genetic union creates a diplomatic channel, a recognized lineage that grants Earth protected status. She touched his face gently. But some believe humanity should never join the Galactic Alliance. The severance faction would rather see Earth isolated forever, or destroyed if isolation fails. Miles away, in a different government facility, Elena Vasquez sat across from Agent Mercer, pale but composed. You're sure about this? Mercer asked, sliding satellite images across the table. Elena nodded. The symbols in these crop formations match the markings on the ship that crashed at our wedding, but they're not the same as the markings on Thalira's pendant. She pushed forward her own notes. I'm a cultural anthropologist, Agent Mercer. These symbols represent different factions, possibly at war. Mercer studied Elena with newfound respect. You're helping us track down the man who left you at the altar. Why? Elena's jaw tightened. Because whatever is happening is bigger than my broken heart, and because despite everything, I still love him enough to want him alive. Back in the cave, James and Thalira's conversation had given way to desperate intimacy, their bodies finding solace in each other as the world grew more complicated around them. In these moments, the bond between them manifested physically, a subtle luminescence where their skin touched, a synchronization of heartbeats, a telepathic connection that made each sensation echo between them. I can feel your thoughts, James whispered in wonder as they lay together. The bond grows stronger, Thalira confirmed. Soon, the genetic transfer will be complete. Before dawn, they were on the move again, making their way toward what the crystal showed was an ancient landing site, a place where Thalira's ancestors had first arrived on Earth millennia ago. They'd reached the hidden valley as sunset painted the sky in colors that reminded James of Thalira's eyes. Standing stones circle the central plaza, their surfaces etched with symbols identical to those on Thalira's ship. The gateway, she said reverently. From here, we can signal the High Council of Astray. With proof of our bonding, they will override the Severance faction. As night fell, Thalira began an intricate ritual, the crystal and her pendant working in harmony to create patterns of light that stretched toward the stars. James stood in the center of the stone circle, feeling energy course through him as his genetic heritage fully awakened. The sky above them rippled like water, stars shifting in impossible patterns. The bonding was nearly complete, the bridge between worlds forming in their united DNA. Then a voice called from the darkness beyond the stones. James? Elena stepped into the circle of light, followed by Agent Mercer and a team of agents. Behind them came Thomas, his expression torn between duty and friendship. Elena, James breathed, the name feeling strange on his lips after days speaking the ancient language of the stars. Whatever you're doing, Elena said, her voice shaking slightly, you need to stop. There's another ship in orbit, bigger than the first two. It's not friendly, James. Thalira stepped to James's side, her hand finding his. The Severance flagship, she confirmed grimly. They come to ensure our bond is never completed. As the two women faced each other across the stone circle, one human, one alien, both loving the same man, the sky above them split open with light. The final convergence had begun. The massive ship hovering above the ancient stone circle cast everything in harsh, blue-white light. Unlike Thalira's organic vessel, this craft was a monument to angular precision, a weapon given form. Smaller craft descended, surrounding the site as figures in armor more advanced than anything Earth had developed emerged. Stand aside. Thalira of House Vela commanded a tall figure whose helmet retracted to reveal features similar to Thalira's, but harder, with eyes of cold silver rather than violet. The Council has ruled. Earth remains in isolation. Commander Vorex, Thalira acknowledged, her voice steady despite her fear. You speak without authority. The ancient accord cannot be broken by military decree. James stepped forward, the crystal pulsing in his hand. Genetic memories now fully awakened gave him the language and protocol needed. I am Kieran of House Caldwell, Earth Guardian, and I recognize no ruling that violates the original compact between our peoples. Vorex's silver eyes narrowed. The half-breed speaks our tongue. The contamination has progressed further than anticipated. He raised a weapon. The bloodlines must be severed permanently. Wait. Elena's voice cut through the tension. She stepped forward, shielding both James and Thalira with her body. I studied the markings on both ships. Your people have been divided for centuries over humanity's fate. Vorex hesitated, surprised by the human woman's boldness. "She speaks truth," came another voice. From behind the armed soldiers emerged an elder astray, her ancient face mapped with the same luminescent patterns that appeared on Thalira's skin in moments of emotion. "I am Lizara, High Chronicler of the Council." Commander Vorex acts without full sanction. The standoff stretched, two factions of an alien civilization facing each other on Earth soil, with humanity caught between. "The bonding is nearly complete," Thalira said, her fingers intertwined with James'. "Feel the resonance, Chronicler." The genetic bridge forms, as was foretold. James felt it too, a completion of something that had been building since Thalira first appeared at his wedding. Their genetic codes were aligning, ancient markers activating, creating something neither fully human nor fully astray. Lizara approached, her ancient eyes evaluating them. "Show me the heart seed," she commanded. James held out the crystal given to him by his grandmother. It pulsed between them, its light synchronized with both James's and Thalira's heartbeats. "The convergence manifests," Lizara acknowledged. "But is it sufficient? The Council fears humanity's chaotic nature, your wars, your environmental disregard. That's why we need this connection," James argued. "Guidance, not isolation." Elena stepped forward again. "Your people have been watching us for millennia, haven't you? Stepping in at crucial moments." Lizara nodded slowly. The Guardian Houses were established to prevent catastrophic missteps in humanity's development. But some believe the experiment has failed. "Then let me speak for humanity," Elena said, her anthropologist's training evident in her measured words. "We're flawed, yes, but we learn. We grow. We love across boundaries and build bridges where there were walls." Her eyes met James, not with resentment now, but with understanding. "Sometimes, love finds us in unexpected places, across wedding aisles or across galaxies. That's our greatest strength." The air seemed to vibrate with tension as Vorex and his soldiers kept their weapons trained on the group. But among the astray, whispers started, ripples of discussion at the human woman's words. "Unexpected," Lizara murmured. "The bondmate's former intended, advocating for the very union that displaced her." James stepped toward Elena, emotion tightening his throat. You don't have to." "I do," she said firmly, "because I finally understand. This isn't about us, James. It's about everyone. Two civilizations at a crossroads." She smiled sadly. "Besides, the way you look at her, that's real. I'm an anthropologist. I know love when I see it, even when it's not directed at me." Thalira approached Elena, violet eyes meeting brown in a moment of profound female understanding. "Your wisdom honors your species," she said formally, then more softly added, "Thank you." As the three stood together in the center of the ancient circle, James, Thalira, and Elena, the crystal flared with blinding intensity. A beam of light shot toward the stars, connecting Earth to distant Vela. The genetic bonding completed itself in that moment, Thalira and James becoming living bridges between worlds. "It is done," Lizara announced, her ancient voice carrying authority that even Vorex could not challenge. "The convergence is achieved. Earth joins the galactic community under the protection of the renewed Guardian Houses." In the days that followed, much changed and much remained the same. The world governments, guided by Mercer's agency, began the delicate process of accepting the reality of extraterrestrial contact. Thalira's people established an embassy, with the Guardian Houses, now represented by James and Thalira, serving as intermediaries. At a quiet ceremony held under the stars, James and Thalira formalized their bond according to both human and astray traditions. Elena stood as witness, having found her own unexpected path as humanity's first cultural ambassador to the astray. "Was it worth it?" James asked Thalira as they stood on the balcony of the mountain cabin that had become their home, overlooking the valley where two civilizations had begun their official relationship, crossing galaxies on the chance that ancient genetics might align. Thalira's violet eyes, now so familiar and beloved, studied the stars above. The stars themselves are born of chance, yet they form patterns of perfect harmony. Her hand found his, that familiar warmth passing between them. Some would call it destiny. Others, a fortunate accident of cosmic design. And what would you call it? James asked. Thalira smiled, the luminescent patterns on her skin glowing softly in response to her emotions, a trait that James himself had begun to develop as their genetic bond matured. I would call it love, she said simply, the one force that transcends both stars and species. Above them, the night sky seemed to pulse in agreement, as two worlds formerly separated by vast distances found themselves connected by the most human and most universal of bonds. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.